Which one do I take to the supermarket, to the movie theater, on vacation, to work? What am I going to keep in my bag as my everyday carry? If you're like me, you have 1 or 6 or 7 too many of these retro gaming handhelds. Or maybe you're just looking for the perfect one to buy that will cover all the bases. Either way, I'm glad you're here to help me solve my everyday carry problem, and I hope along the way, I can help you too. Let's get into it. As we get started, I want to say that I'm looking at only a certain type of handheld, ones that are affordable, budget handhelds that are under $100. And I've picked 7 of my favorite devices that I've reviewed over the last couple of years, and you might not see the device that you want on my desk here, but hopefully this video will help you think through exactly what it is you need and want to come to the right decision. And as we get started, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check the description for affiliate links to all these products. It really helps the channel out at no added cost to you. Now, I'm going to be judging these on 4 categories: portability, performance, screen size, and sound. And we're going to start with portability. Now, these come in a variety of different sizes, and that's a good thing. And so here's 4 different good examples of devices that have different screen sizes and different body types. The thing that's really tricky about portability is that generally the smaller the device is, the less comfortable it is to hold for longer periods of time. So you take a device here like the RG Arc S. Now, this is the biggest sub $100 device that I have, and it's great. It's super comfortable because it has these bump outs in the back where my fingertips fit perfectly. It's amazing. But it's much too big to be carrying around in my pocket comfortably. In fact, here it is next to a phone, and you can see that it is much longer than the phone and definitely much thicker than a phone. And so this is not the kind of device that I think you'll want to carry around on your person all day. Now, if you're going to be keeping this in a backpack or something, and maybe you have some kind of case to put this in, that's a different story, and that's definitely something to consider. But for me, this is a keep on the end table, keep on the coffee table, keep at your home office desk kind of device that you can pick up and play. And at home is probably where you're going to be playing games for a longer period of time anyway, which makes the comfort even more important. It's the same with the RG Cube XX. It is super comfortable because it has these ergonomic bump outs, but that makes it really awkward to fit into a pocket. This is not a portable device. And that brings us to these kinds of devices here. You've got your micro consoles and then your vertical handhelds. And this is the RG35XX, and this is about as large as I would want for a device to be that's going to be in my pocket. Definitely a pocketable device. Would I want to carry it around all day? I don't really know. Here it is again next to a phone, so you can see it's much shorter than a phone, but again much thicker. But I do still love this device. It's the first one I ever reviewed, and it has a special place in my heart. And that brings me to the micro console. Now, this is a 2.8-inch display. It is definitely the smallest. This is the MIUI A30. Here it is next to the RG28XX, and they're essentially the exact same size and thickness. These are ultra portable and slide right in and out of your pocket. Now, this is where things get a little strange. Here we have the Trim UI brick. This is a vertical like the RG35XX, but it's smaller and closer in size to a MIUI A30. So strictly looking at portability here, you have a device that's much slimmer. It doesn't have these bump outs here on the triggers. It's thinner, it's shorter. This slides in and out of your pocket very easily, just like this one does. This is a toss-up for me. These are 2 of my favorite devices of 2024. I really love the MIUI A30 with Spruce OS, but the Trim UI brick just has a little more power and just looks and feels nicer. It has a higher build quality. So I'm very tempted in terms of portability to give the win to the Trim UI brick, and I think that's what I'm going to do. Now, next up, we're going to look at screen size. But first, I want to talk to you about something even more important, and that's our mental health and today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Relationships of all kinds can be challenging. I've often asked myself, why do I feel so anxious when people don't text me back? Or if I bring up this issue, is it going to end in an argument? These are tough questions, and trust me, you're not alone in asking them. But instead of letting these questions loop endlessly in our head, you can get real answers, and that's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp offers fully online therapy, making it easier and more comfortable to begin. With over 30,000 licensed therapists, BetterHelp will connect you with one who can help you navigate these complex relationship dynamics. Whether you're dealing with a communication issue or just feeling like you're not good enough, a therapist can help you untangle your thoughts and emotions and develop personalized timelines to see true progress. By filling out a questionnaire, you'll be matched with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. And if it's not the right fit, you can switch therapists at no extra cost. BetterHelp even has over 7,000 reviews with a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, making it a platform you can count on. Remember, going to therapy is a sign of strength, not weakness. So click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/bonosgaming to get 10% off your first month of therapy. Now, back to my daily carry dilemma. Now for screen size, I'm going to go ahead and show you the difference between 4-inch display and a 2.8-inch display. This is the largest difference comparison I can give you, and I guess probably the biggest consideration for most people is how good is your eyesight. Some people are going to struggle to see this 2.8-inch display, even though it's bright and the colors are crisp, and these are really sharp and will surprise a lot of people. I think that, when you're looking at it on paper, you think, that's going to be too small, but in person, it's not as bad as it sounds. But obviously, having more screen real estate is never a bad thing. And so for many people, I think this 4-inch display is going to be a huge draw. It definitely can help minimize eye fatigue and it really just helps you see all those little details in the game. But these are all 4x3 displays. What happens when we throw something in like the RG Cube or the RGB 30? These handhelds right here have 4-inch square displays. These are 1:1 aspect ratio, and I'll tell you what this is really great for. It's not just great for your 4x3 because it fits on here, or your 3x2 because it fits on here, but it's really great for vertical arcade shooters and Nintendo DS. Those dual screens really do fit on here much better than on a 4x3 display. And a lot of people like to take their 4x3 content, say their Super Nintendo and Genesis content, and make it 8x7, which kind of stretches it out a little bit, but not in a super noticeable way, and takes more advantage of this bigger screen. These are also excellent for Pico 8 games and original Game Boy games. So in some ways, when looking at screen size, you kind of have to ask yourself, what do I want to play the most, or what kind of consoles are the most important to me? And when you really start to think about it, these 1x1 displays might be the all-around best choice. And of course, I've got these vertical handhelds here, which have, again, a 4x3 display. A lot of them have a 3.5-inch display, and I do want to say that even though this 1x1 is 4 inches, you can see here that the width of these screens is exactly the same. That means your 4x3 content on a 1x1 4-inch display is going to be 3.5 inches diagonally, just like it is on this device. So you're not losing anything, a 3.5-inch screen, but you're also not gaining anything for most systems. And then you have the Trim UI brick again, which actually is a little bit smaller. This is a 3.2-inch display, but has a higher resolution than the other ones, making it again like this really weird kind of standout device. It's doing everything a little bit differently, and that's not a bad thing. So for screens, I think it comes down to these three right here. I really enjoy having the 4-inch display on the Arc, but I like the square ratio of the RG Cube, but I love the sharpness and high resolution of the Trim UI brick. But I think if I had to pick just one, I'm going to go with the RG Cube XX, which has the exact same display as the RGB 30. For those of you wondering, they are both 4-inch 1x1, 700 by 700 pixels, and they look absolutely fantastic. Now, what about performance? Performance is obviously one of the more important aspects of gaming. And when it comes to these devices, again, all these sub $100 devices, they more or less have the same performance. One might have a little bit of an edge here, the other one might have a little bit of an edge over there. Sometimes if you switch to a custom firmware, it might improve the performance, or as that firmware is updated over time, it might improve the performance. For example, the 28XX, the stock OS from Anbernic on this device has been slowly improved over the course of the last year to where it has in some cases doubled the frame rate from when it launched. And it just goes to show you that with further optimizations and updates, all of these devices have hope of doing more than they could initially when they were released. But all of the devices I'm looking at today, they cap out at doing like some N64, some PSP, some Dreamcast, some Nintendo DS, but anything beneath that, it's going to perform incredibly well. But the two devices I've been most impressed with performance-wise have been the TrimUI Brick and the RG Arc S. Now the RG Arc S is using the RK3566 chipset, and the TrimUI Brick I believe is using the Allwinner A133. But here you can see them both running Crazy Taxi without skipping a beat, and that's the case with most of the games that are going to be available to play on these systems. Now the one kink in my grand plan here of saying that these are the winners is that when it comes to 3D systems, a lot of times you want a joystick, and neither of these devices have that. And that brings me to want to talk about the RGB30 and the RG Cube XX. Both of these are excellent performers and have joysticks. Now obviously the joysticks makes it less portable, but what's the point of keeping a few of those N64 or Dreamcast games that are playable on your device if you can't play them because you don't have a joystick? So I think that these have to be contenders when it comes to talking about performance. And so if it were between these two performance-wise, I think that just ever so slightly, I'm gonna have to give the edge to the RGB30. It does perform just a little better, has a little bit higher frame rates, even though it's much less comfortable than the RG Cube, and I don't think the sticks are as nice, or even the D-pad and the face buttons. All around, the RGB30 feels like a much cheaper built device than the RG Cube XX, even though they're about the same price point, and that's because the chipset in the RGB30 is a little more powerful. So with that being thought out, that makes me put these two head to head, and again, these are both running the same chipset, the RK3566, and this is kind of where I just get stuck, because honestly, I'm probably gonna be happy with any one of these that I pick, but if I'm looking for the one that performs absolutely the best frame rates on the most games, it's gonna be one of these two. And so I think I'm gonna have to give the winner of this round to the RGB30 because it has joysticks, but I need to put like an asterisk by it because the gains here are almost negligible. And lastly, I want to talk about sound. Now I think this breaks down into two categories. One is the sound quality of the speakers on these devices, and the other is the actual way the device itself sounds. And what I mean by that is the actual button sound of the device, how it sounds to use the device. And one of the things that drives me absolutely nuts about most of these is that most of them have clicky buttons at somewhere on the device. Something that you're using regularly has a really loud click to it. On the RGB30, it's the start and select buttons. They're just too loud. On the RG35XX, it's the triggers. Way too loud. TrimUI Brick surprised me because it does have micro switch buttons that have a little bit of a click to them there, but it's not too loud. It's actually pretty subtle. The RG Arc really surprised me because it doesn't have clicky bumpers, and I fully expected it to. The same for the RG Cube XX. These don't click either, and that just makes me so happy. But the most discreet sounding device in all of these is probably, surprisingly, the Miu A30. These have the quietest face buttons and the quietest triggers. They are almost unnoticeable. So this has to be a contender, except for category number 2, and that is this speaker. The worst part of this whole device, really, honestly, is probably the speaker. It does put off this really high-pitched ring that you can hear, even sometimes from several feet away. And it's really weird, and it's one of those things that even a custom firmware hasn't been able to fix yet. So that's kind of strange. But other than that, this is the most discreet device I have. And for a mono speaker, when the volume's turned up, it does sound pretty good. One of the worst sounding devices in terms of speakers is actually the TrimUI Brick. I think these are way too tinny. The one thing I will give them kudos for is that they are forward-facing, front-firing speakers on a vertical handheld in stereo, which is very unique, but they just don't sound good. I think they're probably just too small because they fit 2 of them in here instead of 1. And so there is literally no bass and almost no mids at all. Fortunately, it does have a 3.5mm headphone jack, which the Miyoo A30 does not have. You have to use a USB-C dongle to use wired headphones with the Miyoo A30. The rest of these devices, actually, while we're on that topic, all have 3.5mm headphone jacks somewhere on the device. There it is on the RG28XX. Actually, they're all on the bottom somewhere. So if you're into wired headphones, you definitely don't want the Miyoo A30, but any of the rest of these will do great. The speakers that sound the best, in my opinion, are the ones on the RG Arc S. But again, you have the biggest device, probably the widest diaphragm speakers inside here. They're also forward facing, and you have stereo. So this by far has the best sound quality straight out of the box. But these others, the Cube, the RG35XX, the RGB30, and the 28XX all perform really well. They're all admirable. And honestly, if you're looking for that one device, you're not going to be comparing it side by side with something else anyway. So to wrap up, who's the winner? That's the real question here. Well, for portability, I believe I put the TrimUI Brick as the winner, even though the Miyoo A30 is actually the most portable device that I have. But I think the build quality on the Brick gives it the edge here. When it comes to screen size, I believe it was these 3 devices here that were the most compelling to me. Your 4-inch 1x1 display, your 3.2-inch high-res display, and your 4-inch 4x3 display. And I think if I were just playing at home only, the RG Arc S would probably win this category for me. But since we're talking about everyday carry, it really for me comes down to these 2, or maybe replace the RGB30 with the RG Cube XX. And then there's performance, and that's got to be the trickiest category because again, the differences are so nuanced from device to device. But I think it does probably come down to these 3. They do, on the higher end systems, I believe, just perform slightly better. It's almost not even noticeable. In a lot of games, it's really not noticeable. The winner here is very difficult to pick. Again, I think it's probably going to come down to the RGB30 only because it has the addition of the joysticks. But from a straight FPS perspective, these are pretty much a tie. And that brings us to sound. And when it comes to button sound, I think that the contenders here have to be the Brick for that subtle tactile click. I would also put the Miyoo A30 back in the running here because it is the most discreet button sounds that I have ever experienced on a handheld. The RG Arc and the RG Cube XX, those are interesting. The face buttons on the RG Arc are just a little bit clackety. They're not clicky, they clack. And I wonder if it's not because they're larger in diaphragm than the other. Larger in diaphragm? Diameter. They're larger in diameter than the other ones. And so I guess, I keep shuffling these around here, I guess that means that we're down to these 3 devices here. The Cube XX, the Miyoo A30, and the TrimUI Brick. And I'm stuck. Again, I don't know which one to pick. They're all so close. I think overall, it would probably come down to these 2 being the quietest buttons. And then I would have to pick based on performance. Or is it picked based on portability? See, this is why this is so tricky. Alright, so if you were going to pick on button sound first, I think that it would depend on one extra factor, and that's, do you have a bag that you're going to keep this in, or are you going to put it in your pocket? If you're going to put it in your pocket, it's the Miyoo A30, obviously. If you're going to put this in a bag, I would definitely go with the RG Cube XX based on button sound alone. And then you have the sound of the speakers. Now, if you're going to be using headphones, you don't want the Miyoo A30, so that one's gone. Sound. Gosh, all of these have stereo sound. We've gotten rid of the mono sound ones. They all take headphones, so that's good. But the best sounding speakers are going to come down to these 2 right here. I do believe the RG Arc S or the RG Cube XX. And the ultimate winner, speaker sound wise, is going to be the RG Cube XX because it does have the largest speakers. They are set wider apart than any of the other ones, and they're forward facing. So the winner for me is going to come down probably to these 4 devices. I would like to know which one you would pick in the comments below. But if I'm going out and I just need something in my pocket, I'm going to be gone for an afternoon, maybe we're going shopping as a family or something, I know I'm going to be sitting around a little bit, I'm probably going to pick the Miyoo A30. It goes right in my pocket, I can pull it out, play for a few minutes, and then put it away, and it stays very discreet. Now, if we're talking about playing for extended periods of time, it's going to come down to these 2, the RG Arc S and the RG Cube. The RG Cube is a little more ergonomic, I think, but the RG Arc S keeps my hands apart just a little more. It's more comfortable for my shoulders and my arms, and the triggers just fit really nice right there on my index fingers. So really it would come down to, hey, if I'm going to keep one at my desk, it's going to be one of these 2, both very comfortable for extended play sessions. The overall winner, I think, has to be the Trim UI Brick. This is more comfortable than I thought it would be. Despite its smaller size, it's more pocketable than most of the other handhelds here on the desk. The screen is smaller, which makes it more pocketable, but it's not as small as the Miyoo A30. You get the performance out of this, and it does have some pretty sweet RGB lighting on it. The only real complaint I have about it is the sound quality, but I think my overall winner for EDC, my everyday carry, has to be the Trim UI Brick. It does everything I would need it to do in a portable form factor that's both stylish and comfortable. But what do you think of my conclusion? Is the Brick the winner for you too? Or would you have picked something else? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this helpful, please consider liking, subscribing, or even becoming a channel member. All those things really help me and my family out a lot. But stay kind and encouraging out there, and I'll catch you on the flippity flip.